Hello everybody and welcome to the next segment of our trip. On this leg we will be going through New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma. We have a winery tour in New Mexico as well as we stopped at White Sands National Park on the way.
We're going to talk about the severe weather we hit in Oklahoma, and we're going to explain how we plan our trips.
I'm also going to spend a little bit of time talking about how we do meal prep, especially for long trips. And we will wrap as usual with our gotchas and our learnings along the way. So let's get going. We just love New Mexico. Artistic surprises are everywhere. We stopped at a rest area outside of Las Cruces, and this great Roadrunner art piece caught our attention, which was pretty cool. We stayed at a campground called 81 Palms RV Resort in Deming, New Mexico. I'll share a bit more about that in a minute, but it's right down the street from the winery we visited, Luna Rossa. Luna Rossa is owned by Paolo and Silvia Di Andrea. Paolo's family has 4 generations of wine growers in Italy, and he has brought his expertise to New Mexico. Of course, they specialize in Italian wines, and having been to Italy a few times, we can highly recommend this vineyard. The area is arid and windy, so it appears they have the perfect conditions for growing the right kinds of grapes for wines such as Vermentino, Pinot Grigio, Montepulciano. They have an extensive selection of wines. Here's a copy of the tasting sheet. You can select 5 choices, accept reserved options, and there is no charge for the tasting. We found the wine prices to be very reasonable and left with 3 bottles to share with our family. Service was super friendly, and they have a little retail shop as well. Many locals were popping in to pick up a few bottles as we did our tasting, so we know this is a popular place. When we realized our driving route for the day was going to take us right past White Sands National Park, I mentioned this to my mom during a morning chat, and she was adamant we needed to find a way to visit as she had been here long ago. When we are towing the car, we normally do not visit sites during the driving day. We pull up short if needed at a campground, disconnect the car, and go sightseeing, as it can be really complicated finding parking or difficult to find a place to turn around if you're not familiar with the place. We did a Google Map view and saw there was a good-sized parking lot with dedicated RV spots for the visitor center, so we decided to give it a shot. White Sands is a very cool natural wonder. It's not really sand, it's the largest gypsum dune field in the world, so you really need to put this one on your list to visit. It's a big park at 275 square miles and offers a ton of things to do, including hiking, sledding on the dunes, and even concerts and night events from time to time. You definitely need to check the schedule before you go, as they are located within the White Sands Missile Range, and if testing is happening, the park will close for several hours until clear. We have a lifetime national park pass, and you can get one too if you're over 62, so entrance was free for us. We asked the park ranger on where we should park. He gave us some great advice. It can be very hot and windy here, even if the sand is white and cool, so make sure to bring a hat and water. One thing that is really tricky here too is your footsteps are covered pretty quickly by the wind, erasing any path you made, so pay attention to signs so you don't get lost and cannot find your way back to the car.
We wanted to give you an idea of the different types of RV parks we typically stay in. They range from a forest preserve with no facilities whatsoever to high-end resorts with multiple pools, restaurants, golf course, and live daily music. Where we are today, I would consider a nice average campground. Not really a resort, but they did have an indoor pool, a large laundry room, lots of space. You can stay here for about $50 a night, and they also had a monthly rate posted for $330, plus electricity, which is metered separately. As we move throughout this trip, we will try and make sure we can show you a variety of camping options. We use one tool to plan our trips called RV Tripwizard, and I'll show that to you next. RV Tripwizard is a great tool as it provides turn-by-turn directions. It knows most of the campgrounds and parks in the U.S., and it also knows exactly how tall your rig is so it doesn't route you under a bridge that would cause an accident. When you first get started with RV Tripwizard, you need to set up your default settings. This is where you tell the program about your rig, how tall it is, how long it is, average fuel mileage, routing and driving preferences. We normally like to travel about 3 hours per day, and we enter that in here, and it will create a driving radius, so it helps us plot out which campground we want to stay in. It's a pretty easy tool to use. Next, we'll try and create a trip. We're planning on heading to Detroit, Michigan for a family reunion in the middle of June. So I'm going to go ahead and type in June 6th as our start date. I will then enter in our starting position, which happens to be in Savannah, Illinois, at a campground called Seven Eagles. Now that we're at our starting point of, say, Seven Eagles, I'm going to zoom out to see where our radius takes us. We do want to head towards Michigan. We're going to take the long route. We're going to go up through Wisconsin, spend some time in Door County, then north to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and we're going to cross the Mackinac Bridge, maybe spend a day there. So from here, you can see I'm in Savannah, and my 3-mile radius shows me right about here. Oshkosh, Wisconsin will be a good 3-hour mark. So you can see that populated right now are all the campgrounds that are commercial campgrounds. You can filter these, but first you have to zoom in on the area that you plan on staying for that night. So I'm going to zoom in on Oshkosh, and it will display all of the campgrounds that are in the area. The ones with the brown dots are state parks. The ones with the green tents are commercial campgrounds. If you prefer to stay at Good Sam, they have the Good Sam logo on some of these. So that means they do accept your discount card. You can click on the different parks over here. You can click on points of interest. There's also an area that you can add filters. So let's say that you only wanted to stay at park types that were, say, state parks, BLM land, county parks, or the majority of them are going to be the commercial parks. So right now we're going to go ahead and choose one of these near Oshkosh. I'll take a look at the Circle R campground. I'm going to look at the park details, and it will tell me a little bit about it. The features are they do have full hookups, which we like to have if we can. We can look at reviews. You can read to see if they have decent reviews. Looks like they have 14 reviews and an average of 3.5 stars, which is really not that great, but we're only going to stay there for one night. So I'm going to go ahead and add this campground to our trip. We're going to just be there one night on our way to Door County. So we're going to choose to add it right after our last stop, which will happen to be Seven Eagles. So I'm going to go ahead and say add. And now you can see that Oshkosh, Wisconsin is our next stop. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to zoom out and see where our radius puts us. It looks like we're going to be less than 3 hours from our stop, and I know I'm planning on meeting friends in Sister Bay, Wisconsin. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that campground, that area. I'm going to zoom in. So once I zoom in on Sister Bay, I can take a look at what exactly a good spot to stay. We had a friend tell us that there's a state park. This is it, called Peninsula State Park, that has great views as it's right on the water. So I'm going to go ahead and stay there. I'm going to add it to the trip. We're going to be there for 5 days. And it will be right after, no, that's right after our last stop, which for some reason doesn't want to display right now, but I'm going to go ahead and say add. I'm going to remove that tab. Once we leave Sister Bay, we're going to head north to the UP, and we plan on staying at a campground in Iron Mountain, Michigan. So I'm going to take a look at those. Looks like this River Bend campground should meet our needs. I want to make sure that it has full hookups. It does. I want to make sure the reviews are good. I did look at this earlier and I noticed that it did have nice reviews. And to be truthful, we do really look at each website of each campground when we're actually making a reservation. We like it when we can make the reservations online. So I'm going to go ahead and add this one to the trip. We're going to be there for 2 nights. Then our next stop will be Mackinac Island. Actually, we can't stay on the island, but we're going to stay in a small town that has a ferry stop. Hang on one second. St. Ignace is the name of the town. So let's take a look. It's right by the Mackinac Bridge. There's a lot of different choices. This is it right here. So I'm going to go ahead and add that one. We'll be there for 2 nights. Once we leave St. Ignace, I'm going to go ahead and add the Detroit KOA, as that's where the family reunion is going to be. And we already have that site booked for 3 days. So if I add it now, it'll tell me the exact route that it wants us to take, so I can then choose where we're going to stop next. Because I believe this is about a 3-hour drive, and that's a little bit too far for us. It's about a 5-hour drive. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's 5 hours and 11 minutes. So from St. Ignace, I'm going to zoom out and see where our 1-night stop between here and that KOA is going to be. It looks like we're going to be driving down this interstate. I believe it's 75. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and see where a good spot might be to stop. This spot, Linwood, appears to be 178 miles from St. Ignace, so I'm going to go ahead and add that to the trip. We're going to be there 1 night, and I'm going to add it after the Lakeshore RV Campground. One other thing that we do quite often is we will go ahead and make notes in RV Tripwizard, as once you do that, you'll know exactly where you have to stay. If you made reservations, we put a reservation number in to the notes. We'll put in a cancellation policy, and you can also print this whole trip out so you know exactly where and when you need to be somewhere. So it's easy to have a hard copy that we print out in case we want to know where we're going to be in a few days. We need to have something maybe shipped to the campground. So we'll go ahead and make our notes here as far as if it's been reserved, or what our site number is. In certain circumstances, they'll go ahead and give you your site number. So we like to have those details in to the saved notes. I hope you enjoyed this demo.
We stayed at Moonflower Meadows Campground in San Patricio, New Mexico for just one night. This is a perfect example of a spot you'd pull in, don't unhook the car, make sense and hit the road early the next day. The spot was about $40 a night, had full hookups, had to be self-contained in your unit. As you can see, there was lots of room to spread out and even goats next door. They were fun to watch. We had a relaxing evening by the fire and got some rest as the next few days were looking pretty stormy.
The tornado risk is lower with this storm that will run down to the south. But it's that spin that the storm has way up high that can keep it with large hail, and that is strongly now near the Xerox plant. If you're in Bethany, if you're in Sundance, the village, up into Edmond, you have about 10 minutes before this storm is going to move in with destructive hail. This is a big, big deal. And obviously,
When you're traveling and driving an RV down the highway, you have to pay attention to the weather. We arrived to our next stop in the pouring rain and hail, as you can see. We did not sustain any damage during the storm, thankfully, but some areas a mile or so away were reporting baseball-size hail during this storm. Tornadoes were also touching down in nearby towns. This is an example of an underground shelter at our campground in Oklahoma. They had several throughout the park, and this one happened to be right next to us. Sometimes the designated shelter is a block building where shared restrooms and showers might be, but they'll tell you where it is. When you're traveling during tornado season in the plains area of the United States, it's really critical you pay attention to what's coming. We will run a channel scan for the RV for local news weather channels, so we have the most up-to-date information in addition to apps that we use, such as weather.com. When we check into the park, it's also important to ask about storm shelters and where to go if the tornado sirens go off or if wind gusts become dangerously intense. Wind gusts can be really scary, especially as semis pass you or you are on open flat areas such as Highway 40 in New Mexico or Texas, or it's storm season in Oklahoma. You will see the wind gust warnings all along some stretches of highway. There is an app called Ventusky from the App Store that we use to look at wind gusts, as well as looking at radar on the weather app for the next several hours. I find it a bit more detailed than the radar overlay on the regular weather app, though, so highly recommend you download this app. It's been hugely helpful to us. High winds can flip your RV. For us, when the winds look to exceed 30 miles per hour, we will pull off and wait. And at 50 miles per hour, we will find shelter elsewhere, such as a Walmart. It's really important for me to have a well thought out meal plans, as I have some dietary restrictions and it can be tough to eat out just anywhere we go. Plus, we have this amazing kitchen in the RV and we prefer a bit healthier food choices than what we can typically find in a restaurant. We recently had to replace the original microwave convection oven that came with the RV. It lasted 4 years, which isn't terrible, but we regularly use an air fryer at home. So we picked a high point model that included an air fryer and even grill and broiler functions. So I've been having some fun with it on this trip. I tend to plan for meals in 4 categories. The first one is breakfast. This one is easy. It involves a rotation of some egg-based meals, basically, but nothing too complicated. The second one is lunches while traveling. Since we only drive 200 or so miles per day, we use the midway stop as our lunch, whether we are at a rest area, a travel center, or maybe even a Walmart parking lot. Walmarts are pretty accommodating to RVs, and they generally have huge parking lots, so it's easy to get in. We park in the back lot, have lunch, get back on the road. It's also a good chance to stretch our legs a bit. Although the slide is in during this time, I have good access to my cooktop and the microwave. The fridge doesn't open all the way when the slide is in, but it's enough that I can reach in and get whatever I prepped, maybe a salad that's sitting on the top shelf as an example. This category might include things like tuna salad, cold lobster rolls, rotisserie chicken salad, and assorted wraps. Many times I make whatever that salad is in the morning and set it on the top shelf in the fridge, so all I have to do is grab the bread, put the sandwiches or wraps or whatever together, and we're good to go. The third category is lunches during a longer RV park stay. I save more complicated options for lunch while we're at an RV park. I like to take the time to cook. These options may include grilling fish, making some Asian dishes, maybe chicken schnitzel in the air fryer or similar. And then my fourth category is dinners at the campgrounds. We don't generally have a huge dinner, but we like options like crab cakes, yakitori chicken skewers, or even air fried chicken thighs. I will say that I do like to either prep a more complicated meal at home and or make the full meal and freeze in dinner portions to make things easier on the road. Some of examples of this would include like ramen. I will pre-slice the meats, I'll prepare the sauces and marinades in separate little containers, and then I put everything in like a big Ziploc bag, kind of what you might have from a meal service, and put the rest of the instructions in the bag itself. So all I have to do is buy the fresh vegetables the day we make that meal and we're all set. Another example would be like meal soups or stews. So if I'm making something like pozole that requires a bit more complicated recipe or tools, I will pre-make a huge pot of it at home and then freeze in lunch or dinner size portions in freezer bags. And what I like to do is freeze them flat. So it's like a book, so they can be stackable in the freezer. I try to plan for an extra day at our family stops if possible. So if I can use my kids as kitchens, and they've got some nice kitchens to prepare for the next leg, I love to do that. It's cooking with the grandkids. They love to help, and we get to keep our food options somewhat consistent. But that's the general gist of my food planning, and along the way I will try to highlight some of our meals if you want ideas for your own trips. Of course, there's always the standard camping standbys of burgers and chilies and things like that, of course, but with as long as we're on the road, this is a better planning option for us. I will put the recipes in the comments below, and please let me know if you have any creative recipes you'd like to share. Bon appetit! Okay, so this is the part of our video where we like to share our gotchas and learnings along the way. As you saw, the second half of our trip was extremely volatile weather, so I won't rehash all that, but I will leave you with 3 key things. The first being to make sure that you are looking at weather and radar during your travel path for that day, not just where you're at, where you're going, but the path along the way. Second would be, if you haven't had the opportunity to download Ventusky, it's free. That app has worked really well for us and seems to be a better and more accurate weather overlay, and will tell us hour by hour, again, not just weather where you are and where you're going, but the path along the way. And then last would be, most campgrounds have over-the-air channels that you can scan your TV for when you get there, and we have found having those local weather channels available to you when things get a little dicey is really important. So, and technical issues.
Yes, we did have one technical issue this trip, or this leg of the trip. We had a problem with the power cable for the backup camera. And I'm going to go ahead and play a video that explains how we resolved that issue. One of the internal wires for the power cable for the backup camera had come detached. So I had to cut the insulation back and then solder it back to the connector to reestablish power. This fix did get us through to the next major city, where we ordered another replacement cable from Amazon. Our RV does have a backup camera, but as soon as you take it out of reverse, the image from the camera disappears. So we added this external camera in the back window so we can view it on our phone up front.
So that's it for this leg of the journey. Thank you for joining us. We are now headed north and east to Missouri, to Illinois, and ultimately ending up at family in Indiana for the next leg of the trip. So we look forward to you joining us.
Please, if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and leave some comments on maybe what future videos should look like, or what kind of content you like the best. We'd sure like to hear about it. And we'll see you on the road.